Well, welcome back to our journey through the Proverbs. This is day 6 of a 31-day journey as we go through the 31 chapters of the book of Proverbs. Now, today we're dealing with chapter 6, and chapter 6 is right in the middle of course, chapters 5 and 7. And chapters 5, 6, and 7 have a lot of warnings against adultery. And that might seem a little heavy, and you might be like, what in the world is with all of this adultery business? And not only is there a lot of talk about adultery, but it's kind of one-sided because it seems to be addressing just boys or young men or this kind of a thing. But if you keep in perspective that it's not just literal adultery that we're talking about here, but it's sort of a metaphorical adultery, that'll help you sort of keep a perspective. Let's go ahead and dive on into the text for today, shall we? So we are dealing with Proverbs chapter 6, and Proverbs chapter 6 verse 1 says, "My child, if you have become collateral for your neighbor, if you have struck your hands in pledge for a stranger, you are trapped by the words of your mouth. You are ensnared with the words of your mouth. Do this now, my child, and deliver yourself, since you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, humble yourself, press your plea with your neighbor. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of the fowler. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which, having no chief, overseer, or ruler, provides her bread in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you sleep, sluggard? When will you arise out of your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So poverty will come as a robber, and your scarcity as an armed man. A worthless person, a man of iniquity, is he who walks with a perverse mouth, who winks with his eyes, who signals with his feet, who motions with his fingers, and whose heart is perverseness, who devises evil continually, who always sows discord. Therefore, their calamity will come suddenly. They will be broken suddenly, and that without remedy. There are 6 things which the Lord hates, yes, 7 which are an abomination to him: arrogant eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are swift in running to mischief, a false witness who utters lies, and those who sow discord among brothers and sisters. My child, keep your father's commandment and don't forsake your mother's teaching. Bind them continually on your heart. Tie them around your neck. When you walk, it will lead you. When you sleep, it will watch over you. When you awake, it will talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light. Corrections of discipline are the way of life, to keep you from the immoral woman, from the flattery of the wayward wife's tongue. Don't lust after her beauty in your heart, neither let her captivate you with her eyelids. For a prostitute reduces you to a piece of bread. The adulteress hunts for your precious life. Can a person scoop fire into their lap and their clothes not be burned? Or can one walk on hot coals and their feet not be scorched? So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her will not be unpunished. And don't despise a thief if he steals to satisfy himself when he's hungry. But if he is found, he shall restore 7 times. He shall give all the wealth of his house. He who commits adultery with a woman is void of understanding. He who does it destroys his own soul. He will get wounds and dishonor. his reproach will not be wiped away. For jealousy arouses the fury of the husband. He won't spare in the day of vengeance. He won't regard any ransom. Neither will he rest content, though you give many gifts. Wow, that is some powerful, powerful stuff. Now, until just recently, I had always kind of read that as though it was sort of like dealing with literal adultery. Man, isn't that dumb? Well, that's a pretty judgmental call. But what's interesting is that just recently, those last few verses where it talks about jealousy arousing the fury of the husband, I thought, what if the husband that we're talking about here is God? What if God is the one who we're being adulterous against? It says that he won't spare in the day of vengeance. He won't regard any ransom. Neither will he rest content, though you give many gifts. It's like, hey, no matter how bad you screw up, or when you screw up, no matter how bad you think it is, there's nothing that you can do. Only Jesus' sacrifice on the cross can placate God, or not, I'm not sure if placate is the right word, but can appease God. So I just thought that was a really interesting insight. It wasn't the main insight I wanted to focus on for today, but I thought it was kind of fascinating. What I really wanted to focus on was this in verse 26. It says, "For a prostitute reduces you to a piece of bread. The adulteress hunts for your precious life." Now, I'm going to come back to the first part, but that second part, the adulteress hunts for your precious life. What does that remind you of? Does that remind you of a particular verse? For me, it made me think of 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, where it says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." Wow. The adulteress hunts for your precious life. What that verse made me think of, the one in 1 Peter 5, made me think of Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, where it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood." It's not against that literal adulteress or that literal prostitute. The battle is against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. There are spiritual enemies that we have to face every day. The people that are doing the adultery, they're just people that are caught up in the devil's schemes. And so that verse, "The adulteress hunts for your precious life," really puts things into a spiritual perspective, that there are things in the spiritual realms that are trying to pull us down and drag us down. But back to this first part of the verse where it says, "For a prostitute reduces you to a piece of bread." Wow, that's really kind of embarrassing or kind of humbling. When we do something, when we give in, it's like we're reducing ourselves to a loaf of bread, which is not very valuable. I mean, sure, they're worth more than 5 cents, more than a nickel nowadays, but anyhow, what it made me come up with is this affirmation. My affirmation that I take away from this, it might sound kind of goofy, but that's intentional. Because it kind of jolts you and kind of makes you think. So the affirmation is, "I will not be reduced to a loaf of bread." Or similarly, an alternate version of that would be, "I am more valuable than a slice of bread, doggone it." What am I, chopped liver over here? It's that kind of sentiment where it's basically saying, you know what, you're not going to treat me that way. I won't let you treat me that way. I'm going to have some self-respect here. So these are a couple of affirmations that you can use to kind of snap you out of, a temptation or something. I'm not going to be reduced to a loaf of bread. I'm more valuable than a slice of bread. I'm going to have some self-respect. So those are my takeaways. Now, my friend J. David from Morton Grove, Illinois, wrote in with his takeaway from chapter 6, and here's what he had to say about it. He said, "This chapter is a great reminder of how important it is for me to watch my heart and mind. It took me years to finally live a disciplined life, and even now, during quarantine, there's a huge temptation to just want to forget everything and be a sluggard. But when I get lazy and or unproductive, I become depressed and can't do anything else, and I get even more depressed because I didn't do anything for the whole day, and the cycle continues infinitely. Crazy that a lazy life can start with just one lazy morning." The rest of the chapter is also great for inspecting my heart to make sure that all my intentions are for good and for God and not plagued by even a hint of evil desire. Well, thanks so much, J. David, for writing in your takeaway from chapter 6. Certainly appreciate your input. I'd also love to hear from you, the viewer. What did you take away? What's your takeaway from Proverbs chapter 6? Would love for you to leave a comment so we can all benefit from your takeaway. And if you have any questions, anything at all, please feel free to reach out. There's more information in the description area on how to connect with us. But for now, I'll let you go. So long and have a great day.